See Julie, hey? Got to saw Julie.
We stayed at the same hotel. We stayed at the Hilton Adelaide. We didn't see him once. Not once. So we were there, like, bang, gone.
Actually, also, when we go to dinner, I'll put my suit back on at dinner. So,
I just grabbed it because I'm on the back and misprints.
the cover.
Now I'm cooking it. Put the story up there, put that in the setting.
Top cover, this. Yeah, good one.
But you know, this convention thing's all kind of new. I have done clinics before for Marshall around the world, and this has been part of our the band's tradition before I joined, and now since I've been in the band. And I'll talk to you a little bit about the equipment. I'll play a little bit for you, just fool around with whatever they got here. This is a nice display. I didn't even see it. Very nice. All right. So first, let me just talk to you a little bit about my gear, what I use, you know, and how the Marshalls. Obviously, whatever you want to talk to me about, we'll keep more with more technical, or what you think, you know, I could really answer for you. But really, what you've been hearing for the past Revenge album, Out in the Shade, and now you know, Live 3 especially, is a Marshall 900 series, which I have one head that's great. I've played through a few. I have a combo that's really great sound. I know now they have a new SLX model, which has even more gain, which I know on the next record I'm going to get a hold of one. But, because the next record will be heavy, yes. Okay. Basically, I think they also got me plugged into a little Marshall acoustic amp tonight, which sound pretty good for the people who like to play acoustics, okay? Like, tonight's really going to be funny playing the acoustics, so that's a lot of fun, actually. Kiss Unplugged. I never thought it would happen, but you'll hear it tonight. So, my rig really is simple. You know, I plug into, I have a rack that's got a 900 head kind of built into it, and I'm plugged straight into that, no effects, nothing fancy. I also use something called a Sans amp, which goes out to the board and the house, which is kind of like a direct amp recording device that I like. I use those on stage, and hopefully, you know, tomorrow and the following night at the shows, you'll get a taste of, you know, what I like to hear out of my amp and all. I'll plug in a little bit anyway for you guys. So that's really it. In the studio, like I said, it was a good influence with that too. I couldn't believe how much we kind of distorted the tracks just to make it sound kind of more aggressive, and all that works. You learn every time you go in the studio. You learn some more tricks, and you try to make it. On my first tour, well, when I first started on the Animaloids tour, that was in Europe in 1984, and I mean, I was definitely very nervous. The first show, I mean, you know, knees shaking and the whole thing, because I had no idea what it was like to be on stage with Gene and Paul. Certainly, at rehearsals, we didn't really go full tilt. We weren't on 10 yet, and then there it was, and it was pretty scary at first. But then, you know, you really got to learn how the band works. Now, you'll see when you see the shows. You don't want to hit Gene, I'll tell you that. Man, he's big. So, you know, you learn your way around, and he's good looking too, yeah. No, we love Gene. Yeah, back there. You know, I'll be honest, I played with Meatloaf, believe it or not. Back in 1978, this is when I was really learning, you know, what it was like to be a professional musician and get out there and perform. My brother and I were the two twin, you know, it was Killer and Pretty Boy. And I'll tell you, my brother was Killer, okay? And we came to Australia. It was very exciting. I got to be honest, I don't remember too much except that the women were beautiful and it was very pretty. I remember Sydney, the harbor, you know, but I think we played like 4 or 5 cities, but it was, I swear, it's such a blur to me. I think I wasn't very happy about backing up Meatloaf then. It was I mean, you know, it was a great show and everything, but it wasn't totally my cup of. But next time, hopefully, you know, it's a great country. We got to come back here for sure. Yeah, over here. On the which one? On any of the albums, yeah. All the records really are done where we cut the drums are the most important thing first, and a lot of bands do it this way. It's really, you know, we try to go for a spirited performance with the drum track to make it, you know, make that work and make something to build over. But we layer guitars, and it's just the only way to get it done right. And actually, sometimes we're even writing and developing the songs while we're in the studio. We may have the drums right, but Unholy was a completely different song before before you guys, the version you heard. And it was kind of strange how Gene was able to rewrite the whole verse. We decided let's make it even heavier, and all of a sudden the whole verse changed, and that was done after the drums were cut. So that's the only way to do that. Yeah. Yeah, good question. I mean, when I was just a temporary guy, that's the way, you know, I perceived the gig, and it was a very exciting time for me, as you can imagine. Though I really only looked at it that, okay, this is going to happen for 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, you know, and if things, I didn't want to wish anyone else bad, and it's a good lesson in life, really, because good things will come to you when you just kind of pure within yourself. I got to really kick some ass on, and you know, there's other great Kiss albums. I think great record. There are other highlights of other records that I've done. I just always felt like Revenge really kicks ass for the new band, you know, for the modern band. Yeah, over here. Well, you know, they're kind of like. They're like a married couple in a weird way, you know, or like two brothers who are slightly different, but kind of understand each other. And I was always, one of the big bonuses of getting the gig was realizing, here, I'm going to really learn. You know, I was in other bands and I backed up other people before, but here are two guys who are very successful and know what it's like to sustain a group, and they carried on through a lot of adversity, you know, people saying it'll never happen and you guys stink, and they just always kind of move forward. So Gene's he's real intense in his, you know, passion for what he does and who he is, and Paul is you know, Paul's just a natural rock star, you know, from the second you see him, you go, wow, he's a rock star, right? And Gene's just, you know, he's a beast. So, but I've learned a lot in the sense of, you know, their commitment to the fans, to the music, to what they do, and even though there's been times when both of them weren't as focused, especially Gene at certain points, you know, you got involved with Hollywood and the seduction of all that, but they really know how to, you know, pull the reins in, and they communicate really honestly with the two of them, and no one ever gets really nasty or emotional. You know, we're always able, even as a band, to talk things out, and that really helps a lot, because a lot of bands, you wouldn't be together all this time. They wouldn't be together if they didn't care about each other, but know that they need to communicate. You know, so it's the same thing in your relationships with your, you know, your girl or your parents. You got to be honest and just let it out. It works that way. Yeah. So far, everything's going great. I know Perth, there were a couple of things that didn't work right. You know, that happens on the first show. But I know Adelaide worked really well. The crowds were great, and I think, you know, we'll get even a better show here, because obviously each time the crew that we have and everything's tightening up. But it's really a big. I'm very happy, because it really is a big arena rock show. I didn't know exactly how much we were going to be able to take and show you guys, but it's very exciting. We play like 25 songs. We're up there for 2 hours. So hopefully we'll get one of those songs you want in there. Yeah. Mix. Okay. I thought there was a cool word there, but I didn't catch it. We consider ourselves professional, and fortunately we've had professional people do our sound, do our mixing, and yeah, there's been nights, not on the Japanese or this tour so far, that we've been like, oh my god, this guy's a moron, you know, and it really can affect, I mean, when you're out there in the crowd, you people don't always understand our mix is different from your mix, and it may not really work the way, you know, it just, sometimes it doesn't sound good to us, but you try to, if it wasn't for your enthusiasm, you know, obviously, you know, I'd have a kind of sour face on, but I can count on one hand in my whole career here with the band, the nights that I was really disappointed with the monitor mix, you know. I'm not too picky, and the guitar's not that difficult to crank, you know, I always get a great sound from my amps, and hey, just put it through a little monitor, and sometimes I find a sweet spot on stage where I'm really hearing my amp, which is what I really like to do. But sometimes, I mean, we get kind of loud up there, so you got to rely on the monitors. And since I don't have the singing stuff is the hardest stuff to get right with the monitors, and you know, since I'm not really singing, I just concentrate on the guitar playing, so I'm never too unhappy. Yeah, talking about me singing, the only reason that suddenly came up, you know, and kids always ask, and the fans are always, when are you going to sing a song? I really don't consider myself a good singer, okay? I know maybe that doesn't matter, but, you know, I have sang on some of the demos when I've been working with Gene and Paul, just to give a reference of like the next, a lot of these songs really take huge levels, and they start out as just like a rough verse and with a chorus idea, and then that chorus is gone, there's a new one, and, you know, they develop. Sometimes really, sometimes it'll take a year to be done, and sometimes it's the first time you sit down to write it is the right thing. But there were a couple of times, just to show on my demos when I was making the progress that I sang, you know, I put a lot of effects on the voice, and I doubled it, and, you know, and the point of it was just to make a reference for Gene, you know. I showed Paul once the same thing, and he was like, yeah, okay, give me the version without the vocal. I said, okay, you know, it's okay, I made you two just to show you what idea I had here, but, you know, it's really just for reference points. But the new stuff's coming along great, and again, the reason why it's taken so long is just like Revenge. We really want to make the album special. First time we got together, a lot of the material wasn't really ready, and some of it was okay, but not totally in the right direction and focused. And now we got a real firm idea of what we're doing. Some of the demos are cut. They're not finished, but there's a lot of good stuff, and it's catchy, it's heavy, it's a little experimental in some ways, and I fucked up with some tunings that are kind of weird, that sound cool, so it's going to be a great record, another good Kiss album. Yeah, over there. I was probably on tour for, I think it was 6 weeks in Europe, so, you know, that might have been at 4 or 5 a week, whatever, 30 shows, maybe a little less. And then in America, I think it took a month, so again, probably about 20 shows or so, until they realized that I'd be the guy. And it wasn't such a, that they needed a long trial period. I think they were really trying to be fair to Mark St. John, which was the right thing to do. See if he was going to be ready to do it, because, you know, I was kind of like, people didn't even know. In Europe, they knew where I was, because the press is very quick. They knew, oh, I was a guy, ex-blackjack, and oh, whatever, guitar player to fill in. In America, these kids were coming, they didn't know if it was Vinny, Ace, Mark, who, you know, Mystery Man. They didn't know what they were singing, so I was kind of really glad once it was, you know, a definite. Yeah, with the camera there.
On behalf of all the fans and myself, and condolences for the loss of Eric Hart. At the time when he passed away in 91.
Well, because when you see someone have to go through that and then pass on. But ironically enough, we were already cutting tracks for Revenge, and then right when, after the funeral and all that sadness and grief, I realized, hey, you know, it was time for me to do solos. And I was kind of glad, only because it was like, I wanted to get right back into work, you know. I'm not saying there's any relationship to the kind of work and Eric's passing, but certainly in your life, when someone passes you on, you realize every day is precious, and you want to make every day special, and you gotta really you know, seize the day, shall I say. So I'm glad I had work to do, you know. If we were like in the middle of no projects, I would have been depressed a lot longer, you know. So I try to think, when I do think of Eric and I think of all that, I try to think of it in a positive way. I know he always had a great sense of humor, and there wasn't a kind of person that I ever met. He was very generous and wonderful, and I know he'd want me to be sharing that with you, and he'd want me to be playing guitar and you know, having a party with you guys. So in that kind of, when I think of it that way, I realize, you know, it's sad, but there's something good to be learned from something tragic like that. Yeah. You know, ESP would certainly, they've asked me, you know, why don't you come up with a Bruce Kulick model, and I'm so fickle. It's like, I mean, to me, they're like guitars. I have like at least 30, and they're all a little different. You know, I got some vintage stuff, and I have, you know, this style, and I have a V this, and an Explorer that shape, and a Strat this, and a Tele that, you know, and it just gets like, I love them all. It's like I'm a real guitar addict. I have that guitar acquisition disease. You know, every like couple of months I got to get another guitar. I get rid of some eventually, and because of that, there isn't one. You know, it was like cool that like Paul when he you know, worked with Ibanez back in the 70s, and he developed the Iceman, took a model that kind of looked like that but was kind of cheesy looking, and then made it great. You know, he had a vision for something and developed it, and there it was. You know, the Iceman, and Gene always has had a firm kind of idea that he likes, like on a guitar, the horns to be equal shapes, or the axe, because he thought that was cool. You know, there was a real thought of it that followed who they are and what they're into. And for me, it's like I'm not sure, you know, so that's why I haven't done it. But rest assured that every guitar I play on stage is a guitar that I like, that's been set up and kind of spec to what I like, which may not be what you like, you know. Just because you play, everyone who plays someone else's instrument doesn't make it you know, make you sound like them. It'll never happen. Like, this is an Eddie Van Halen guitar. Eventually I'm going to get one of those, because they are very good. And I'll probably swap something for one, you know. I'm always doing deals like that. But I'm not going to sound like Eddie through it, even though it's a great guitar, and he picks it up. Obviously, he sounds like Eddie through no matter what. So, used it on a Live 3. I didn't use it on this tour, because I got this new Les Paul Custom that's killer. The yellow guitar that's on the back of the Crazy Nights album, that ESP, that bolt-on, I think burns, you know. And I have a white one that I have on tour with me that's very similar to that. I had it like, okay, let's get the same kind of neck, get the same, you know, every guitar sounds different, you know, every tree, you know, has a different resonance, you know. Maybe somebody pissed on one of them, whatever it is, but generally, I mean, I dig a lot of my guitars. The Explorer that I use too, and that's killer, you know. All my texts, they've always like, I want this guitar, Bruce, can you give me this guitar, you know. If you die, who do I speak to about these guitars, you know, I want this one. So, you know, that's a good compliment to me. I got a lot of good instruments. I'm very fortunate. Bumped into Ace once or twice, and it was just a cordial hello, how you doing, you know. And I know he's you know, he said nice things about me in the press, and I have nothing but respect for him. Peter, I really don't know well, although, you know, I've said hi to him, and, you know, like a NAMM convention, you know, those things they have in the States for all the equipment stuff. So, you know, for me, there isn't a past relationship anyway, actually, that I have to compare it to. You know, I mean, Gene and Paul will talk about it tonight, you know, at the thing about, you know, that they're on good terms with them, although there's always seems to be some schisms that come up because of the business and the whole nature of the band carrying on, and they're being, you know, it's kind of like a divorce, you know, there's your ex-wife or something like that, so it's always, sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's a little thorny issue. So, you know, like I said, I don't have much relationship, but I always wish them well, you know, and I have a lot of respect for what they've done with the, you know, the early Kiss, obviously. The Beatles as a group for music was always a big influence for me. And then came Eric Clapton, and that was exciting, you know, because I don't know, something about Cream, you know, you knew this guy was just like brilliant on the guitar. Jeff Beck, another one, really great. I said Hendrix already. Is that my little shit stirrer friend over there? Yeah, there it is. Wanna come in and say hi? Oh, he's videotaping me. He's got a video. He's just hanging out with the road crew, you know. He's a Bruce groupie too today, right? All right, in there. So, there's got to be another guitar player. Oh yeah, Eddie Van Halen is definitely for the more modern styles. You know, I like Joe Satriani, but I think Eddie for the modern guy, the band. And you know, there's no doubt that Paul and I saw a lot of the same artists when we were growing up in New York. We didn't know we were at the same concert, but we saw Hendrix at the Fillmore, and we saw the Yardbirds, and we knew we were seeing magic. There was no doubt about it. You know, I remember bootlegging myself, Jimi Hendrix. You know, I was sitting there with a little tape recorder. You know, it's still a great concert. When I liked Forever. You know, it was kind of different. Unholy. There's a lot of stuff on Revenge that I'm real proud of. You know, it's like I'm not embarrassed by any of my stuff. You know, it's just like those kind of stand out to me of some of my solos. I mean, maybe you guys have other ones, but you know, no. There's some good stuff on that. Yeah, but you know, I always try to do my best, and then you listen back sometimes and go, oh, that was better than I thought, or sometimes you go, You know, you got to be your own worst critic, because you'd rather do it yourself than have someone do it to you. That's for sure. Yeah, over here.
How do Rufus reflect you and Eric as well about all the times and words that Peter makes and coming back, like the big story?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that, we know the source, and it's like you know, somebody that works for Ace or Peter, you know, because it would be like, what better way to get people very excited about something from their desires than to give a press release as, hey, we had lunch with them, and you know, it's in the works. And you know, I know it isn't. Well, you know, Gene and Paul will talk about it tonight, but I mean, the worst thing, and something I certainly don't ever think will happen, is to Gene and Paul not to be respectful enough to me to say, hey, you know, look, this is going to really happen, and for me, you know, for me to find out something like that, if it ever happened from the paper, you know, is pretty rude. And I know they wouldn't do that. So it's always a shock to them, and they get really pissed off about it. And then we get to do more press and say, hey, it's not true. Yeah, we love the guys, but, you know, it's not true. And how did you get that report? Oh, well, it's, you know, Ace's publicist or something like that. And maybe she's just doing her job, you know, on her angle. But it's kind of like tabloid, you know, news, right? And you can't always believe everything you hear, and you got to go straight to the source. So that's us. And you know, you ask Gene and Paul about all that stuff tonight, they'll explain it, but yeah, does it hurt a little? When I first see it, I get a little, you know, it bothers me, you know. It's kind of like someone saying, you know, maybe your wife or something is, you know, dancing with some other guy and you don't know about it, you know. It's going to hurt you. But I don't take it seriously, because I realize, hey, it's in a newspaper, and you can't always believe everything you read. You realize that. Yeah. Who's the aggro? Meaning who gets the most aggravated? I wouldn't want to be around Gene on a bad day. Yeah. Paul can, he doesn't, you know, I mean, he gets pissed off, but it's different. Gene can really, he'll you know, rip your head off when he's never, I mean, I'm not saying with me though, you know, one thing, the four of us always talk things out in a very calm way, you know. Gene's never rude to me, or you know, Paul and I, we really can have heart-to-hearts, all that. The communication is great, but I've seen him rip new assholes on people, you know, and beware, you know. Yeah.
How do you and Paul play the guitar parts? You know,
On the new stuff or older stuff? Yeah. Well, usually, I mean, he always knows Paul's stuff, and he shows me kind of some of the, especially the live records. It's really cool because there you go. It's like that was one thing that was really special, obviously, about the early band, and it got very, very hard. They'll tell you about. Well, you saw the costumes out there. What Eric Carr almost looked like. And fortunately he had a brainstorm and came up with something that was much better. And then obviously when Vinny joined, it was like, well, what is he going to be? It's a tough thing, and there's been some creative people through the years sending drawings of Eric Singer and I, like what we could be, the sorcerer or the hawk and this and that. But that was kind of the magic about the early band that we don't kind of want to fool around with too much, because it is really hard. I mean, if you think about a cat, a spaceman, the demon and a lover, those are very, very strong, identifiable type, kind of characters that they were more than just characters. Those really were kind of what those guys were, So, I don't know, maybe I am a dog, right? Yeah. I don't agree, but I do know, we all have our favorites. There's times that, obviously Paul's going to love what he writes, and there was a time though on some of the albums in the '80s where Gene and Paul didn't agree on doing let's say up-tempo double bass drum wild stuff, where I liked it, Eric Carr loved it because he can do his double bass drum thing, and they were kind of popular then, that style. And he was growing into well, I'd rather do a Hide Your Heart or something different. So, but that's the beauty of Kiss, is that there isn't just there isn't one guy forming the direction. It really is kind of a whole band. There's four wheels on the car moving, and even though Gene and Paul are definitely kind of steering the car, there's another two tires back there that are going to scream and yell and want some some attention, and they want to be heard, and we are. So I was into that. I thought it was cool. A lot of kids like it, so it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And that's okay. I know Paul thinks that's okay too. He wants to say that. I'll talk to him about that later. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. The solos are created always very different, just like a song. So the cool thing about Marshalls is, I plug in, I get my sound. That's not quite my sound. I'm going to dial it in now. sorry, I do not know the Australian, whatever it is, the national anthem. Isn't it Waltzing Matilda? No, we did a little bit of that on our Live 3, if you're aware of that. It was very exciting, and the arm's a little tight on this guitar. It's not set up for me, it's not mine, but just to let you know why I was looking at everyone like that. So anyway, anybody have any like kind of solos they'd like to hear me butcher it up? Wait. Huh? All right, hold on. I thought I heard a few. Look, Detroit's very simple, and it's actually hard without like the chord changes, but you know. That sounds funny without the chords, but that's it. Here's No 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 for those of you that... Something like that. Okay, cheers for falling. How about Unholy? Fast forward it. You guys are great, you know. I want to thank you, really. It's very exciting, very exciting. Yeah.